I carried the homemade apple pie into my mother's dining room, the warm dish still radiating heat through the kitchen towel. The family dinner was already in full swing, voices bouncing off the walls with practiced ease. My cousin Paula saw me first, her eyes immediately dropping to the dessert in my hands. "Oh look, Susan brought something from her tiny apartment," she announced loudly, her voice cutting through the conversations. "How quaint." Laughter rippled around the table. My brother Nolan snorted into his wine glass. "She probably can't afford anything else." More laughter. I stood frozen in the doorway, the pie suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. My face burned with humiliation as everyone stared at me, some still chuckling, others looking away uncomfortably. Then my mother spoke, her voice quiet but somehow carrying to every corner of the room. "Susan, sweetheart, you really need to do better with your life." The laughter died into awkward silence. Everyone heard her. Everyone saw my face crumble. I set the pie down on the sideboard with trembling hands. Something inside me snapped. "Enough," I said, my voice shaking but audible. The word hung in the air like a challenge. The entire room went silent. Forks stopped mid-air. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone stared at me with identical expressions of shock. I'd never pushed back before. Never defended myself. Never challenged their casual cruelty. Paula recovered first, her face twisting into a smirk. "Oh, come on, Susan. You're being too sensitive. Successful people don't cry at jokes." She looked around the table for validation. Several family members nodded, uncomfortable with my unexpected reaction. "It was just teasing," Nolan added dismissively. "Learn to take a joke." I couldn't breathe properly. The walls felt like they were closing in. Without another word, I turned and walked out onto the back porch, letting the screen door slam behind me. The cool evening air hit my face, and I gulped it down desperately. My hands shook as I gripped the porch railing. Behind me, I heard the muffled sounds of the dinner continuing, life moving on without missing a beat. The door creaked open. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Nolan's footsteps approached, deliberately casual. He leaned against the railing beside me, a smirk playing at his lips. "Don't expect life to hand you a miracle, Susan," he said quietly, condescension dripping from every word. His words should have crushed me. A year ago, they would have. A month ago, even. But standing there on that porch, something shifted inside me. The hurt began transforming into something harder, colder, more purposeful. A clarity settled over me like ice water. I was done. Done trying to impress them. Done seeking their approval. Done believing I needed to prove myself worthy of basic respect. I looked at Nolan, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time. His expensive watch. His designer suit. His carefully cultivated image of success. All of it meant to intimidate, to establish hierarchy, to keep people like me in our place. "You're right," I said quietly, surprising him. "Life won't hand me a miracle." I turned back to face the darkening yard. "I'll have to make my own." Nolan laughed uncomfortably, not sure how to respond to this version of me. He waited a moment, expecting me to cry or apologize or retreat. When I did neither, he went back inside. Alone on the porch, I whispered to myself, testing the words, feeling their power. I'm not staying in this role anymore. The decision felt final. Irrevocable. Liberating. Tomorrow, everything would change. My name was Susan Caldwell, and until that night, I had believed every lie my family told me about myself. I was 31 years old, working as an administrative coordinator at a non-profit organization. My job was stable but unglamorous. No corner office. No impressive title. No stories to share at family dinners that would make people lean forward with interest. So I'd stayed quiet, accepting their assessment of my life as a failure. What they didn't know was that I'd been living extremely modestly for the past 2 years. My tiny apartment was a deliberate choice, not a limitation. I'd been saving every extra dollar, cutting expenses, living with intention and purpose. While they spent money on appearances, I'd been building something real. 3 months ago, I'd applied for something that could change everything. A leadership position with a city-funded program expanding mental health and counseling resources in underserved communities. The application process had been rigorous. Essays, interviews, presentations, background checks. I told no one. Not because I was secretive, but because I couldn't bear another dismissive comment, another patronizing suggestion, another reminder of how I wasn't measuring up. If I failed, I wanted to fail privately. If I succeeded, I wanted the victory to be entirely mine. The decision letter was supposed to arrive any day now. 2 days after the disastrous family dinner, I met with Catherine Hayes, my mentor from the community leadership program I'd quietly joined 8 months earlier. Catherine was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that saw through pretense. We met at a small coffee shop near her office, away from anywhere my family might accidentally see us. She slid an envelope across the table toward me. It was thick, official-looking, with the city seal embossed on the corner. "You're further along than you think," Catherine said, her smile warm and knowing. "Open it." My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. I could feel the weight of multiple pages inside. This wasn't a simple rejection letter. Those came in single sheets. My heart hammered as I carefully tore the seal. Inside were several documents clipped together. The first page had a single sentence in bold at the top: "Congratulations on your selection as lead coordinator and program director." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I'd done it. Against every voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my family, against every doubt and fear, I'd actually done it. Catherine reached across and squeezed my hand. "I never had any doubt," she said. "You've earned this, Susan. Every bit of it." The next morning, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but years of conditioning made my finger hit the accept button. "Susan, we need to talk about your behavior at dinner," she began, her voice carrying that particular tone of disappointed authority. "Your little scene upset everyone. Paula thinks you might be depressed. We're all very worried about you." I listened, recognizing the familiar pattern. They'd rewritten the narrative. My justified hurt had become my emotional instability. Their cruelty had become concern. My boundary had become drama. "We want to help you," Mom continued. "Which is why I'm calling to invite you to a small family gathering this weekend. Nothing formal. Just close family. We think you could use some support." A small family gathering. That meant the same people who'd mocked me, now assembled to express their concern, while subtly reinforcing that I was the problem. 6 months ago, I would have accepted, desperate to prove I was fine, desperate to earn back their approval. "I'll think about it," I said noncommittally. "Susan, it's important. We're your family." I said I'll think about it. I hung up before she could guilt me into committing. The envelope from the city sat on my kitchen table, still radiating possibility. I had bigger things to focus on than their gathering. I went to the gathering. Not because I felt obligated, but because I was curious. I wanted to see them with my new eyes, armed with my secret knowledge. The gathering was at Paula's house, a spacious suburban home she never let anyone forget she owned. Everyone was already there when I arrived, gathered in her professionally decorated living room. The conversation immediately turned to accomplishments. Nolan had just been promoted to regional manager at his company. Paula's husband had closed a major real estate deal. My Uncle Thomas had bought a vacation timeshare in Florida. They passed around photos on their phones, showing off renovations and trips and purchases. Eventually, all eyes turned to me. "So, Susan," Paula said with exaggerated interest, "anything new with you? Any exciting developments in your life?" The question was a trap. They expected nothing, wanted nothing, were asking purely to highlight my lack of news worth sharing. I took a sip of water, letting the moment stretch. "Not yet," I said simply. Smirks flashed around the room. Knowing glances exchanged. Their assumptions confirmed. As the conversation moved on, I heard Nolan whisper to Paula, not realizing I was close enough to hear. "She'll never catch up," he said. Paula nodded in agreement. I smiled into my water glass. The following week felt like living a double life. At work, I gave my notice, explaining I'd accepted a position with the city's new community health initiative. My supervisor was disappointed but supportive, genuinely happy for my opportunity. At the city municipal building, I met with the program's administrative team and signed official contracts. There were financial forms documenting my new salary, which was nearly double what I'd been making. Benefits packages, project timelines, partnership agreements with local organizations. The representative from the city's health department shook my hand warmly. "Congratulations, Ms. Caldwell. You're officially approved to begin. We're excited to have someone with your vision leading this program." I signed the final document, my hand steady. This was real. This was happening. When I left the building, clutching a folder full of official paperwork, I felt like I was floating. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt proud of myself. Not because of external validation, but because I'd worked toward something difficult and achieved it through my own merit. Nobody had handed me this opportunity. I'd earned it. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "You never responded about helping with Paula's birthday next month. Family needs you." I deleted the message without responding. Something changed in me after signing those contracts. I walked differently, spoke differently. The weight of my family's judgment had lifted, even though they didn't know it yet. I started smiling for no reason, humming while I made dinner, sleeping peacefully without the usual anxiety dreams. My mother noticed immediately. She called one evening, her voice suspicious. "Susan, you seem different. Why are you smiling so much lately? Did something happen?" I could hear the unspoken concern in her voice. In her worldview, I had no reason to be happy. Happiness without their approval was suspicious. Possibly delusional. "You'll see," I said mysteriously. "See what?" "Susan, what's going on?" "Nothing bad, Mom. Don't worry." But she did worry. They all did. Happiness in the unsuccessful family member suggested delusion or denial or some kind of breakdown. A few days later, I made the mistake of carrying property development brochures into my apartment building at the same time Paula was visiting a friend in the same complex. I didn't see her until too late. Her eyes locked onto the brochures in my hands, reading the visible words, commercial property development and community space planning. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, curiosity, concern. She didn't approach me, but I knew the family group chat was about to explode. I was right. That evening, my phone started buzzing incessantly with the family group chat notifications. I muted it, but curiosity made me open it later. The messages painted a clear picture of their assumptions. Is Susan in debt? Is she buying something she can't afford? She's going to embarrass herself. Someone needs to talk sense into her before she does something stupid. Maybe she's having a breakdown. My Uncle Thomas, always the most blunt, wrote, "She's never been good with money. This won't end well." They discussed me like I wasn't in the chat, like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person. I scrolled through dozens of messages, each one revealing exactly what they thought of me. Then a private text came through from Nolan. "You should run big decisions by the family first. We can help you avoid making mistakes." The presumption was breathtaking. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling anger rise in my chest. Then I typed my response carefully, reading it 3 times before sending. "I don't need your approval." I hit send and watched the 3 dots appear immediately, showing he was typing. They disappeared. Reappeared. Disappeared again. Finally his response came, "That's not how family works." I didn't reply. The group chat erupted after my response to Nolan. Message after message flooded in, all variations of the same theme. I was being ungrateful, secretive, dramatic, disrespectful. Clearly I didn't understand how family support worked. Clearly I was making a mistake by shutting them out. Clearly I needed guidance. My mother called 6 times in an hour. I ignored every call. She left increasingly frantic voicemails asking what was wrong, what was happening, why I was being difficult. The next day, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw her through the peephole, standing in the hallway with that particular expression of determined concern. She knocked firmly. "Susan, I know you're in there. Your car is in the lot. We need to talk." I stood on the other side of the door, silent. "Susan, open this door right now." More knocking. "Since when do you shut your family out? What's happened to you?" I took a breath and spoke through the door. "Since you stopped respecting me, Mom." Silence. Then, hurt and angry, "Respect? We're trying to help you. By assuming I'm making mistakes? By discussing my life like I'm incompetent? That's not help." She started to respond, but my phone rang. Catherine Hayes. I answered, turning away from the door. "Susan, it's time," Catherine said. "The city wants to do the official announcement next week. Are you ready?" I looked at the door, where my mother still stood on the other side. "Yes," I said clearly. "I'm ready." That evening, I created a folder containing everything I'd accumulated over the past months. My acceptance letter. My contract. Grant documentation. Project blueprints. Partnership agreements with local counseling organizations. Letters of recommendation. Certification credentials. Everything that proved this was real, earned, and entirely mine. I put on my best outfit, the navy suit I'd bought specifically for the city interviews. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. This was it. The moment I'd been quietly preparing for. The moment when I stopped being the family disappointment and became exactly who I was meant to be. I opened the family group chat and typed a message. "I have an announcement to make this Saturday. Please meet me at the Riverside Community Center conference room at 2 p.m. This is important." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate and chaotic. "What announcement? Why so mysterious? What's going on? Are you pregnant? Are you moving away? Susan, just tell us now." I muted the chat again. Paula's message stood out among the others. "This better not be another one of your dramatic moments. Some of us have actual plans." I smiled. They had no idea what was coming. The speculation in the family chat reached fever pitch over the next few days. Pregnancy seemed to be the leading theory, followed closely by bankruptcy or some kind of financial crisis. My Uncle Thomas suggested I might be joining a religious cult. Paula confidently declared it was probably another disappointment, something I'd built up in my head that would fall flat. My mother called repeatedly, trying to extract information. I kept my responses brief and uninformative. On Friday, I took a half-day from my remaining time at my current job and met with a notary. I had final documents to sign, paperwork that would officially transfer me into my new role. The notary reviewed each page carefully, then handed me the pen. "This is quite an accomplishment," she said, reading through the contract. "Program director at your age. The city is lucky to have you." I signed each page, my signature becoming firmer with each one. When I finished, she stamped the documents officially. "Congratulations, Ms. Caldwell." I walked out of that office feeling 10 feet tall. Tomorrow, everyone would know. Tomorrow, the truth would finally be visible. Tomorrow, the unsuccessful one would show them exactly what success looked like. That night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. I kept imagining their faces, the moment of realization, the shock when they understood they'd been wrong about me all along. Saturday arrived clear and bright. I got to the Riverside Community Center an hour early, coordinating with the building manager to set up the conference room. I'd brought a large presentation board covered with a cloth, protecting it from view. The board displayed the full project layout, complete with architectural renderings, program descriptions, partnership logos, and most importantly, my name and title prominently displayed. Nolan arrived first, exactly on time as always. He walked into the conference room and stopped dead when he saw the covered display. "What is this?" he asked suspiciously. "You'll see when everyone gets here." "Susan, what's going on? You're making everyone nervous." "Good," I said simply. Paula arrived next with her husband, both of them looking annoyed at being summoned. My mother came with my aunt and uncle. Cousins filtered in. By 2 p.m., Nearly the entire family was assembled, sitting in folding chairs, whispering among themselves. Paula looked around the modest community center conference room with obvious disdain. "If this is one of those motivational pyramid scheme things, I'm leaving," she announced loudly. My mother added nervously, "Susan, please tell us you didn't buy into some kind of scam." I stood in front of the covered board, calm and poised despite my racing heart. "I'm going to show you what I've been working on for the past year," I said clearly. I reached for the cloth covering the presentation board. The room went completely silent, everyone leaning forward slightly. I pulled the cloth away in one smooth motion. The board revealed everything. The architectural rendering of the Riverside Community Mental Health Center renovation and expansion. The program description outlining free counseling services for underserved populations. The list of partner organizations. The City Health Department logo. The project timeline. And there, at the top in clear, professional lettering, lead coordinator and program director, Susan Caldwell. The room froze. I watched their faces cycle through expressions. Confusion. Disbelief. Shock. Paula's jaw literally dropped open. Nolan blinked rapidly, reading and rereading my name. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "This facility," I began, my voice steady, "will provide mental health services to over 5,000 residents annually. I was selected from 73 applicants to lead this program." The silence was absolute. "But I'm not done," I continued. I pulled out a folder and opened it, showing them the first document. "This is my official contract with the city." I flipped to the next page. "This is the grant approval. The program received full funding from both city and state sources." Another page. "This is my certification in Community Health Program Administration. I completed it last year." I looked up at their stunned faces. I walked them through everything methodically. How I'd identified a need in the community. How I'd researched grant opportunities and program models. How I'd spent evenings and weekends studying for certification while they assumed I was just watching television in my tiny apartment. How I'd applied, interviewed, and competed against dozens of other candidates. How I'd been selected based on my vision, my qualifications, and my detailed implementation plan. "The program launches in 6 weeks," I said. "We'll be hiring a staff of 15, including counselors, case managers, and community outreach specialists. We've already established partnerships with 3 local universities and 4 healthcare organizations." I pulled out more documents. "This is my salary agreement." I didn't show them the exact amount, but I saw Paula's eyes widen when she glimpsed the figure. "This is the benefits package. This is the project budget I'll be managing, $3.2 million over 3 years." My mother made a small sound, almost like a gasp. "I wanted to prove this to myself before I told anyone," I said, looking directly at her. "I wanted to know I could do it without needing validation or approval or permission." Nolan finally found his voice, though it came out strained. "This can't be real. You don't have experience with this kind of thing." I'd anticipated doubt. I pulled out the official letter from the city manager's office, complete with the city seal and multiple signatures. I pulled out my background check clearance. I pulled out reference letters from Catherine Hayes and other community leaders. I pulled out the press release that would be distributed to local media next week. "It's real," I said simply. "Every bit of it." I handed the documents to Nolan, watching as he examined them with increasingly shaky hands. He passed them to Paula, who read through them with her mouth slightly open. The documents made their way around the room, each family member handling them like they might dissolve into smoke. "The certification program required 200 hours of coursework," I continued. "I studied while you all went on vacations and posted about them on social media. The application process took 4 months. I interviewed 6 times with different city committees. I presented a 40-page program proposal to the Health Department Board." I pulled out yet another document. "This is the City Council resolution officially approving the program. My name is mentioned 3 times." The silence in the room was different now. Not the silence of mockery, but of stunned disbelief giving way to reluctant recognition. Paula stared at the floor. Nolan kept rereading the salary agreement. My mother's eyes were filling with tears, though I couldn't tell if they were tears of pride or shame. But, you never said anything, my mother whispered. You never told us you were working toward this. I met her eyes directly. When would I have told you, Mom? At the dinner where you said I needed to do better with my life? At the gathering where everyone compared accomplishments and expected me to have nothing? When Paula joked about my tiny apartment, which I chose specifically so I could save money for professional development courses? My voice stayed calm, but each word landed with precision. Every time I saw you, the message was clear. I was the unsuccessful one. The disappointment. The one who would never catch up. Nolan shifted uncomfortably. We were just joking around. No, I said firmly. You were establishing a hierarchy. You were making sure I knew my place. You were protecting your own egos by having someone to look down on. Paula's face flushed red. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat. Should I read some of the messages from this week? The ones where you all discussed whether I was having a breakdown? The ones where you assumed I was making a mistake? The ones where you talked about me like I wasn't capable of making my own decisions? I looked around the room. None of you believed in me. So I had to believe in myself. And I did. I proved it to myself before I proved it to you. My mother stood up abruptly, tears streaming down her face. Susan, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize. You didn't want to realize, I interrupted gently but firmly. It was easier to have me as the unsuccessful one. It made your own accomplishments feel bigger by comparison. Nolan muttered, almost to himself, why didn't you tell us? We would have supported you. Would they have? I genuinely didn't know. Maybe they would have been encouraging. But more likely, they would have been patronizing. They would have offered unsolicited advice. They would have found ways to minimize the achievement or claim partial credit. They would have made it about them somehow. This was something I needed to do alone, I said. Every step was mine. Every achievement was earned through my own work. And now, standing here with proof of what I've accomplished, I don't need you to validate it. The words felt powerful. Liberating. Paula made a choking sound that might have been a sob. Several other family members looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. My Uncle Thomas, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Susan, we're proud of you. The words should have felt good. But they rang hollow. Proud now that I'd achieved something they couldn't ignore. Not proud when I was quietly working toward it. Thank you, I said, because manners were deeply ingrained. But I didn't feel grateful for their belated pride. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, my mother asked, what happens now? Now, I said, I start my new position in 2 weeks. There's a transition period where I'll be training with the outgoing coordinator, setting up systems, hiring staff. The renovation of the community center begins next month. The official opening ceremony is scheduled for 10 weeks from today. I pulled out another document. This is the invitation to the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The mayor will be there. City council members. Representatives from our partner organizations. The press. I looked at each of them. The event is open to the public. You're welcome to attend if you want to. But remember how you treated me. Remember what you assumed about me. Remember the jokes and the pity and the condescension. Paula's face crumpled. Susan, we were horrible to you. Yes, I agreed simply. You were. Just then, there was a knock at the conference room door. A woman in a professional suit peeked in. Ms. Caldwell? I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Candace Wu from the city manager's office. I was in the building and wanted to congratulate you in person before the official announcement. She walked over and shook my hand warmly, completely unaware of the family drama she'd walked into. We're so excited about this program. Your proposal was the strongest we've seen in years. Candace's presence transformed the room's energy. Suddenly my accomplishment was undeniable, validated by an official city representative standing right in front of them. Your interview with the selection committee was particularly impressive, Candace continued, pulling out her tablet. They said you demonstrated comprehensive understanding of community health needs and innovative solutions for sustainable programming. She showed me something on her screen. The mayor wants to feature this program in her State of the City address next month. She's calling it a model for community-centered health initiatives. My family sat frozen, watching this exchange. Watching a city official treat me with respect and professional recognition. Watching me accept it naturally, like I belonged in that space. I'll let you get back to your meeting, Candace said. But I wanted to say welcome to the team, Ms. Caldwell. We're lucky to have you. After she left, the silence was deafening. My mother sobbed openly now. Paula stared at her hands. Nolan looked like someone had punched him. My aunt whispered, the mayor's address. Oh my God. I gathered my materials calmly, returning documents to my folder. I need to go, I said. I have a meeting with the transition team this afternoon. Susan, wait, my mother pleaded. Can we want to help now. With the program. With whatever you need. I looked at my mother's tearful face, at the desperation in her expression. Part of me wanted to forgive immediately, to accept their sudden support and rebuild our relationship. But I knew better. This isn't a family project, Mom, I said gently but firmly. This is mine. I built this opportunity through my own work. I don't need help now. But we're your family, she protested. We should support you. You should have supported me before, I replied. When I was just Susan with the tiny apartment and the unglamorous job. When you had nothing to gain from being kind to me. That's when family should support each other. Nolan stood up. That's not fair. You never gave us a chance to be there for you. I gave you countless chances, I said, my voice steady. Every dinner. Every gathering. Every conversation. You chose mockery instead. Paula finally looked up, her eyes red. Are we invited to the opening ceremony? The question hung in the air. I could say no. I could exclude them the way they'd excluded me from genuine family connection. I could make them feel the sting of being unwelcome. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. The event is open to the public, I said. Come if you want. But understand that this isn't about you. This is about the community we'll be serving. If you come to support that mission, not to claim association with my success. Paula nodded slowly, looking genuinely chastened. We understand. And Susan, I'm sorry. For everything I said. For how I treated you. The apology seemed sincere, but I'd heard apologies before. The real test would be whether behavior changed. I appreciate that, I said neutrally. My Uncle Thomas cleared his throat. You did an incredible thing here, Susan. Building this whole program from nothing. That takes vision and guts. Thank you. I gathered the last of my materials. I really do need to go. The transition meeting starts in 40 minutes. I folded up the presentation board and tucked it under my arm. As I headed toward the door, my mother reached out and touched my sleeve. Can we have coffee sometime? Just the two of us? I'd like to really talk. I paused. Some part of me still craved my mother's approval, her pride, her love free from conditions and comparisons. But I needed to protect myself too. Maybe, I said. After the program launch. Once things settle down. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a boundary. A way of saying that reconciliation would happen on my terms, in my timeline. She nodded, accepting it. I love you, Susan. I love you too, Mom. And I did. But love didn't mean I had to accept mistreatment. Love didn't mean I had to make myself small to make them comfortable. I walked out of that conference room with my head high. 10 weeks later, I stood on a temporary stage in front of the newly renovated Riverside Community Mental Health Center. Banners flanked the entrance. Local news cameras recorded the ceremony. Chairs set up on the lawn held community members, partner organization representatives, city officials, and yes, my family. The mayor approached the podium first, praising the program as an investment in community well-being. Programs like this don't happen without visionary leadership, she said. I want to especially recognize Susan Caldwell, whose comprehensive proposal and dedicated work made this center possible. Applause rang out. I saw my family sitting together in the 5th row. They looked different somehow. Smaller, humbled, quiet. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that suggested genuine reflection. After the official speeches, it was my turn to speak. I talked about the need for accessible mental health services. I thanked the partner organizations. I introduced the staff we'd hired, all talented professionals committed to serving the community. I didn't mention my family. Not because I was being petty, but because this moment genuinely wasn't about them. When the ribbon cutting concluded and people mingled afterward, dozens of community members approached me. They thanked me. They shared stories of how this center would help their families. They congratulated me on the leadership role. I shined in the recognition, not because of ego, but because I'd created something meaningful. As the ceremony wound down and guests began leaving, Nolan approached me hesitantly. "Susan, do you have a minute?" I turned to face him, professional and composed. "What is it?" I was wondering. He seemed uncomfortable, shifting his weight. "My company does corporate responsibility initiatives. Community partnerships. I thought maybe we could work together on something. It would be good for both of us." There it was. The request for access. The attempt to benefit from my success. The assumption that now that I'd proven myself valuable, he could leverage my position. 6 months ago, his request would have made me feel needed, important, finally worthy of his attention. Now I saw it clearly for what it was. I smiled serenely, taking my time before responding. "I'll think about it, Nolan," I said finally. "But only if you treat me with the respect I've earned." He blinked, not expecting the condition. "Of course. I mean, yes. Obviously. Not just today. Not just when you need something. Consistently." He nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning that the power dynamic had shifted permanently. "I understand." "Good." I turned to greet another guest, effectively dismissing him. Over his shoulder, I could see my family clustered together, watching me work the crowd. They looked proud now. Awed, even. But more importantly, they looked small. Not because I'd diminished them, but because I'd grown beyond the limited role they'd assigned me. I was no longer the unsuccessful one. I was exactly who I'd always had the potential to be. Someone who built meaningful things through quiet determination and refused to accept anyone else's assessment of my worth. And watching them watch me, I felt nothing but peace.